Hi all, welcome to When Tomorrow Comes. As usual, I've got Ashley with me. Hi, how are you, Ashley? All right?
Hi Ian, yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Ashley, I've decided that we've got so far in this, I'm not even going to bother referring to which episode it is. It feels to me it's a bit like birthdays. You get to a certain number and then you just sort of let it go. And we've got Paul, Drew, and we've also got Ben Pearson on the line. Hi guys.
Hi,
Hello, Ian. Hi, folks.
I think we'll start with you, Ben. Usual fashion, if you wouldn't mind just giving us an overview of your Wednesday article, because that then leads us into why we're talking this week on this subject. So if you want to just give us a quick overview of your article.
Yeah, sure. I think it's really just posing quite an interesting question about the role of local councils in being at the forefront of the renaissance of housing design. There's obviously a lot being talked about at the moment in the midst of the kind of fallout from COVID and everybody being stuck at home about how functional and useful our homes are to serve a number of different purposes. And moving forward, whether or not in response to a growing trend, I think as part of a cultural shift of people kind of using their homes in a slightly more diverse way, whether or not local councils will continue to be at the forefront of pioneering high quality and adaptable design. Now, as we know, for those of us who have studied kind of planning and placemaking in the UK, that local authorities historically have had a very prominent role in that, but over the last kind of 40, 50 years or so, there's been a bit of a brain drain in terms of design expertise in local authorities and perhaps an over-reliance on the market to kind of come up with the solutions to how our homes are designed. So I think the question we are trying to generate a bit of a discussion around is actually with a changing shift now of local authorities taking on greater responsibility for delivering their own homes in the midst of the housing crisis and their own objectives for social housing, whether or not actually we're going to see the public sector being at the forefront of this debate. And
so if I'm going to interrupt you, if you don't mind, Ben, just to say to Paul, can you have quantity and quality?
I think you can. I'm finding it interesting that local authorities, which historically have been the bastions of the social good, are now talking to their own estates departments, where their estates departments are saying, well, we also have to deliver assets now. And so being in the local authority and having a duty of care to gain revenue from assets, but also have a duty of care towards the social good, I think is a really healthy mix within local authorities. So I see this as a positive way forward.
So Ashley, I know you were part author on the article. Are you just being politically correct and talking about local authorities because you don't want to look like you're going to be negative about local authorities? What evidence is there that local authorities are actually delivering at a rate of knots, both in numbers and in quality?
I don't think it's a case that we're just trying to be politically correct, and I think it's not all local authorities either. But I think that it is local authorities who have a really significant need for housing and are having to think in innovative ways about how they can deliver that. They cannot always depend on private sector developers to come across with the high quality design or the affordable housing that actually needs to be delivered. And local authorities have now begun to take it upon themselves to have more control over that process and to say, well, actually, we have our own land, we have our own assets, why don't we make the most of that? And I just think that, we need to celebrate the local authorities that have thought about that and are beginning to deliver on that, because surely that can only be a good thing, especially if we can see examples that are really high quality and are delivering the quality that we would expect.
So it's a laudable objective, but Ben, I guess to just sort of keep picking on the point, where's the evidence that we're actually seeing delivery?
I think the evidence is coming from the number of schemes that are being delivered and led by councils themselves. I mean, land is a council's greatest asset. and more often than not, they've got a plethora of it. But as we noted in the article, I think we're seeing not far off 50% of local authorities in England, having their own development companies that have been set up solely for delivery of housing. So I think, you're seeing an increasing trend in terms of the level of responsibility that's being taken by local authorities to kind of find unique ways of using their powers to deliver themselves. I think alongside that as well, the various initiatives that are kind of growing in prominence now, such as public practice, where they've now had, whatever the numbers are, 150 odd people placed into the public sector from private practice, 9 out of 10 of whom have stayed in the public sector, I think is starting to show a slow but significant cultural shift in terms of people's interpretations of what it's like working within an authority, perhaps, being given the freedom to be as imaginative and creative as you would do in private practice. And I think that's quite telling with the number of design awards that are being won as well. We obviously mentioned in the article the scheme in Norwich that won the Reba Sterling Prize, but that's not the only one that I think, is being lauded now for innovation and design quality that has been led, by a local authority. And I think they're feeling more confident, I think, in their ability to go out there and actually commission architectural practices who want to work as part of that, as Paul said, that kind of greater good to help deliver on that social agenda, but not at the expense of delivering sustainable quality homes.
Paul, if I just come back to you, because you've got an interesting backdrop. You've been a builder,
Yes.
A master planner.
Yes.
You've got planning and architectural skills. Is that the best use of a local authority's power to be building? Is this a roundabout way of being critical of the development industry and volume house builders in Ben's article?
I think it could be, if you are looking at a sort of slightly darker side of it. I do believe there is this relationship between product and legacy, that more and more people are interested in having an interest in not just delivering housing, but what does it mean to neighbourhoods well into the future when you've finished your houses. So where a typical house builder, their commitment to their shareholders is to churn product. Of course, for everybody else, it's living in a neighbourhood, making sure that the housing fabric that is there will last at least as long as a mortgage. I find it interesting that, when people buy houses, they're buying the freehold on the land. The land lasts longer than the building. And so do the neighbourhoods that are associated with those settlements of freehold. So I find it really interesting that people are getting interested in this route. I find it interesting that the radar on what constitutes good quality indicators is shifted towards sustainability, and is probably going to shift significantly towards health and well-being. The fact that people are having to work from home is a health and well-being issue, and it's also quite dynamic in terms of what a neighbourhood might end up being like with more people working from home. All these things affect housing design, and maybe the housing developer is a little bit behind the curve in understanding or working with that as something that's positive.
So actually, before I get a load of emails from our clients saying, how dare you suggest that we're not up to this, I wonder what you think the role of the various partnership bodies has, whether that is an opportunity to marry the, if you like, the commercial outputs, the ability to build at cost from the private sector with perhaps the more of the social good and the land that local authorities can often bring to the party.
Yeah, well, I think everyone has a role to play in this. We've obviously, picked up on this article about local authorities particularly and their role in delivering, high quality housing. But I think that we have to acknowledge that private developers have a big role to play in this as well. I think that it's about supporting the private developers and making sure that they've got the correct advice and, are well informed about what high quality design is, and ensuring that it's something that can actually be incorporated into a project from the very beginning, and it isn't something that's just sort of considered last minute. But you know, we all have a goal in delivering housing to meet the housing crisis, and you know, that needs to be balanced up against the delivery of high quality housing. One thing that we noted in an article was obviously the announcements from the government on kind of build, and you know, wanting to make changes to the planning process. And I think we all acknowledge that you know, we don't know the exact details of these changes, but delivering housing is a good thing, but we need to make sure that everyone who's involved in delivering housing delivers it to the high quality that a local authority would expect, and that now people with a new perspective, you know, coming out of coronavirus, will also expect from their new housing as well.
Ben, I'm conscious of time. I'll probably ask you just to provide some closing thoughts if I could, but in doing that, I'd be interested in your thoughts on how we ensure that we're not passing the cost of quality onto the purchaser, because we know how expensive land is and how expensive it is to buy property in the first place. So how do we ensure that that it's not the house purchaser or renter that finds themselves paying for this? Oh, he's gone quiet on me. How very convenient. Ashley, are you there, Ben?
Thinking time. Yeah, I mean, it's that's a very good point. And, you know, all of these things do ultimately come at a cost. I suppose, you know, where the likes of the local authority could probably work around that is where they're already owning the land. You know, so costs associated with acquisition, I suppose, can be recycled, you know, in a slightly different way to how, you know, a developer would be looking at a site from acquisition. But it does beg the question as well, I suppose, you know, the role of the public-private relationship. And, you know, what I'm noticing anecdotally is the increasing number of development partnerships, JVs, between private developers and local authorities in delivering their, whether it be their housing delivery programme, estates renewal, and some of the ways those deals are structured, I think, creates a degree of flexibility that doesn't compromise design or sustainability credentials, because I think, you know, a very important factor in all of this is obviously the sensitive issue of fuel poverty and how you get around that in the delivery of social housing and the need to kind of tackle that issue. So I do think there are ways of doing it, and I think we're seeing a lot of schemes at the moment, you know, that are being delivered to a high standard that aren't then being translated in the sales cost. But I think it does require a willingness, I think, of both public and private to come together for that greater good and think about, you know, how best we can secure quality homes that I think improve that health and well-being angle, that give quality of life beyond just putting a roof over somebody's head.
Very good. Thank you for that, Ben. Thanks everybody for your contributions today. Thanks for watching, and look forward to seeing you next week. Cheers.